Good morning, or depending on when you're watching this, good afternoon, good evening, or good night. My name's Ross, and as always, told out of Voice of Radio. So today we need to take a look at the top 20 cards from Silver Tempest. Silver Tempest is, I want to say, out now. As I'm recording this, Silver Tempest should be out now. And I tell you what, ladies and gentlemen, there are some good cards in this particular set. This, if I may be so bold as to suggest, this looks like a set about which we might be worth getting a little bit excited about. Now, one that just missed for me, Alolan Vulpix V-Star. I kind of wanted to put it on the list. Usually I end up with way more than 20 cards when I make my short list. Here, I managed to time it so well, I ended up with 21 cards on my list. Alolan Vulpix was number 21. I like the idea of an attack that means you can't be damaged by Pokemon that have an ability. And I like having a V-Star power for 0 energy that does 70 damage for each of your opponent's Pokemon V in play. That could be a one-hit KO for 0 energy. I love the idea of playing a cheeky Alolan Vulpix V-Star in any deck that just doesn't have a V-Star power you want to use. Because you know what? It's no energy. Why not, ladies and gentlemen? Why not? But in at number 20, we've got Hisuian Arcanine, a Pokemon that I'm becoming rather fond of. You see, we've got an ability that lets you as often as you like move a fighting energy from one of your other Pokemon to this one, and an attack that for 4 energy does 90 base, plus 30 more for each fighting energy attached to this Pokemon. And I know we don't have amazing ways to accelerate fighting energy right now, I'm aware of that, but we still have stuff like the Galarian Zapdos from Evolving Skies. There are some other ways around. I think this one could be a fun little deck. In at number 19, we've got Leafy Camo Poncho, a card that came out as a promo in Japan a while ago. It's taken us a bit of a time to get it. But it's a tool that you attach to one of your Pokemon V-Star or V-Max, and it prevents supporter cards from affecting them. Basically, they're not getting gusted up. It doesn't work on Pokemon V, only V-Star or V-Max, but it gives you an extra layer of protection, and I can absolutely see it popping up in a bunch of decks. In at number 18, we've got Skuntank V, and this is a card I'm really fond of. For 2 colourless energy, it does 30 damage to one of your opponent's bench. But if that Pokemon retreated last turn, and it has to be retreated, not switched out, you deal 150. 150 to the bench for 2 energies, good. I think this could see a bunch of play. In at number 17, we've got Primordial Altar. This is a new stadium card in this set, and it's one that I kind of like, although it seems like Kato isn't doing the stadiums anymore, and that makes me a bit sad. Once during each player's turn, they may look at the top card of their deck, and they may discard it. So if you particularly want certain kinds of cards in your discard pile, this'll work. Or if you just want to see what your top deck is, if it's what you want, keep it. If it's not, discard it, and then you've got another chance to get it next turn. My biggest issue with this is I don't think it's as good as Pokestop most of the time, so I do think Pokestop is going to have a bit of an impact here in how much play this sees, but I don't really care. I think this is cool, and I'm putting it in at number 17. In at number 16, we've got Chestnut V, and look, this is probably me and other people aren't putting it this high, and I don't care. The attack is fine, nothing special, but the ability says if your active Chestnut V is damaged by an attack, put 3 damage counters on it. That means that if you've got 4 Chestnut V out, and your active gets damaged, all 4 activate, and your opponent takes 120 damage on their active. Maybe it's never going to end up being good enough, I don't know, but you better believe I'm going to test the bejesus out of it. In at number 15, we've got Radiant Alakazam, and this is another one that might be a bit too high, but I kind of dig this. It's not for the attack's kind of terrible. Well, 2 energy, 20 damage for each card in your opponent's hand. It's specifically Psychic Energy, and a lot of the time it's not going to work, but you never know. But the ability Painful Spoons lets you move up to 2 damage counters from one of your opponent's Pokemon to another, and we've seen a bunch of abilities like this in the past be good. And it really is as simple as that. Move damage to get a KO that you wouldn't otherwise be getting. Move damage because you're doing too much for a KO and you can keep that damage on the board. I really like Radiant Alakazam, and I feel good putting it in on this list, frankly. Now, in at number 14, we've got Unknown V, not the V-Star, specifically the V. Because for 3 colourless energy, if you've only got 1 prize card remaining, you win. No ifs, no buts, no maybes. If you've got 1 prize card remaining, you instantly win the game. I adore this. I love the idea of teching this into a bunch of decks. I think this is absolutely prime to be used with Fortin. So you've got a Pokemon with free energy on, a basic, your Fortin, switch to Unknown V, win the game straight away. I don't know, maybe it'll be terrible. I don't think it will. I love this card. Now, in at number 13, we've got Raichu, and I really struggled with this card. Because you see, for one colourless energy, it does 40 damage, that's not good. But if your opponent has used their V-Star power this game, you deal 140 instead. Which with weakness is a perfect amount of damage, not a coincidence, to get a one-hit KO on a Palkia or a Lugia, which is clearly good. But then again, your opponent's not going to want to use their V-Star power. But then again, Lugia's doesn't really have a choice. Lugia doesn't work unless they use their V-Star power. More on that later. Obviously, that card is higher on the list. But then again, Lugia can use Dunsparce to take away your weakness, and basically round and round we go. But you know what? If your opponent ever uses their V-Star power, it's a stage 1 that can get a one-hit KO on a V-Star. And that, for me, is good enough. Also, in Zoroark decks, being able to switch into this single energy KO, love it, ladies and gentlemen, love it. In our number 12, we've got Radiant Serena. Now, Radiant Serena is another kind of awkward one, because what we've got here is an ability that lets you heal 20 damage from each of your Pokemon once during your turn, which sounds good and is good. But honestly, a lot of the time, you are instead going to be using Radiant Gardevoir to just reduce 20 damage done to you. Because there's no point healing if you've already been KO'd. And Radiant Serena heals all of your Pokemon. Gardevoir just stops you from the attack. I don't really care. Gardevoir is seeing more play. And to be fair, Radiant Gardevoir will protect all of your Pokemon. So against spread decks, it does become kind of hilarious. In at number 11, we've got V-Guard Energy. It's one of those ones that you want it to stack, but it doesn't. Actually, that's a lie. Some people want it to. Some people really don't. It's a colourless energy that when attached to your Pokemon, it reduces damage done by Pokemon V by 30. Doesn't stack, so it's only ever reduced by 30. But it's still a nice little damage reduction you are going to be able to take advantage of. I expect to see this popping up in a bunch of decks. In at number 10, we've got another Pokemon that I am particularly fond of in this particular set. We've got ourselves Jinx. Now, Jinx's attack is fine. 2 energy, and it does as much damage as is on them, plus 10. So if they've got 120 on, it does 130. But if this Pokemon is knocked out by damage from an attack of your opponent's Pokemon V, including V-Star and V-Max, your opponent doesn't take any prize cards. So if you can get a bunch of damage around the field, you can use Jinx to start mopping up your KOs. And if your opponent KOs it back, they don't take a prize. I love this. I am testing this one again an awful lot. In at number 9, we've got Rapidash, and I am personally hoping that Rapidash becomes a card that makes fire decks good again. Because I think it could. It's got a really rather redonkulous ability, whereby you can discard a fire energy from your hand, and then all of your fire Pokemon's attacks do 30 more to your opponent's active. Yes, you can use multiple Rapidash during your turn, but yes, you need to have a fire energy for each, i.e. if you've got 4 Rapidash out, you cannot discard 1 fire energy and activate all 4 abilities. It must be 1 energy per ability. But this will basically boost up all your fire Pokemon, and I absolutely love it. In at number 8, we've got Kirlia, and Kirlia is kind of weird because right now we don't need Kirlia. It's kind of irrelevant. Because we've got Cinccino. And Kirlia and Cinccino have the same ability, except Cinccino's got 90 HP and a better attack, so Cinccino's like way better. But early next year, Cinccino's going to be rotating. At which point we will still have Liepard, but the problem with Liepard is that it's got 100 HP, which means it can't be searched out with Level Ball, which is potentially a pretty big deal. So now all of a sudden, Kirlia comes in as your saviour. Don't forget, another really cool thing about Kirlia is that Gardevoir's got the same ability. So what you can actually do here is get your Kirlia out so you can use the ability quickly. The ability is discard a card from your hand, draw 2. We know it's great. It's been great all the way along. It's a really good ability. But then you can evolve up into Gardevoir, get a bunch more HP, make the Pokemon so much harder to KO, and you still get the ability. I think we're going to see a bunch of Curlier. In at number 7, we've got Brandon. And Brandon's another very interesting card. We've got a new supporter card here. And what Brandon does, well, it's got to be the only card left in your hand. That's awkward, right? You can only use it if it's the only card left in your hand. But you draw a card for each bench Pokemon, which a lot of the time is going to be a draw 10. And draw 10 is nutty good. But it's only draw 10 if it's the only card in your hand. And even when you're trying really hard, it's not always possible to discard every card from your hand and have a 0-card hand. So I think Indexer can search for it, and there are a bunch out there. It's going to be nuts good. I think outside of that, it's still going to be a nice tech, but it's going to be harder to use. In at number 6, we've got Regieleki VMAX. It's the only VMAX in the set, and it's good. The attack does 220, which just KOs a Pokemon V, which is fine. It has free retreat, which is a nice bonus. But mostly it's the ability that your basic lightning Pokemon's attacks do 30 more damage to your opponent's active Pokemon. And it stacks. So if you can get multiple Regieleki VMAX, you can be going absolutely nuts here. You know, Regieleki V is 30 damage switched to the bench, but it can be boosted up to 150 switched to the bench. Lightning Wall for free energy does 100 and reduces damage taken next turn by 100. But with 4 VMAXs out, all of a sudden, you're doing 220, which will KO a Pokemon V. And taking 100 less from attacks. Although, I'll be honest with you, it's going to be kind of hard to get 4 Regieleki VMAX out and still have a Regieleki V. But my point is, this just boosts up all of your Pokemon and all your basic lightning anyway, and is really rather great. Now, in at number 5, we've got Regidrago V-Star. I still have faith in Regidrago, but I've been following the results coming out of Japan, and it's pretty obvious at this stage Regidrago isn't good enough. Not right now. It's not a top-tier deck. When I looked at Paradigm Trigger, I put this number 1. I felt good about it. It's not true. It's not number 1. I want it to be number 1. It looks extremely cool, but if it was number 1, it would be winning loads in Japan right now, and it's not winning loads in Japan right now, ergo it can't be number 1. I'm sorry, I've checked the results. But it's still a really good Pokemon. The attack for 2 grass, 1 fire energy lets you copy any Dragon Pokemon's attack in your discard pile, and because it doesn't say that you need the relevant energy, you don't. So take something like Dragonite from the same set. Should be water, lightning, double colorless, but instead it's just 2 grass and a fire, and you deal 180, circulate for free basic energy, attach them in any way that you like. It's cool. It's a really good Pokemon, and it's even got a nice ability as well, of V-Star Power, that lets you discard the top 7 cards of your deck, and then put 2 cards from your discard pile into your hand. But most of the time, this is actually going to be just grab any 2 cards from your discard pile, because you're going to discard the top 7 cards. That's going to be pretty much your whole discard pile. And it's always going to guarantee access to, like, anything you want. You know what, ladies and gentlemen? Yes. I like this. Unfortunately, it's not proven to be good enough in Japan right now. We will cross our fingers. In at number 4, we've got one of them. There are new tablets. One that I think I'm a lot fonder on this than most people, and I am totally okay with this. So the one I put in at number 4 is your Earthen Seal Stone. And what this does is it gives you an attack for any Pokemon V. It is a V-Star Power, but it can be used on Pokemon V. For free colorless energy that puts damage counters on each of your opponent's Pokemon V until its remaining HP is 100. That's really good. Most Pokemon V, you're dropping 120. Pokemon V Star, you're dropping 180. Pokemon V Max, you're dropping like 220 to 240. You are getting a lot of damage around on the field. And we have seen the ruling, over in Japan at least, that this will work with something like Galarian Zapdos V. So you attach this to a Galarian Zapdos V, and your opponent puts free Pokemon V out, and this becomes free. 0 energy. That has got to be worth a try. That's why I'm whacking it in at number 4. In at number 3, we've got the other one though, Forest Steel Stone, which I do believe is going to end up being the better of the two. Again, it's a tablet that you attach to a Pokemon V, and it gives a V-Star power, and yes, it is a Pokemon V, not a V-Star, although V-Star would count as a Pokemon V, as they always do, as would V-Max. And it gives an ability that just lets you search for any one card. It's great. Because the thing is, because it can be attached to a Pokemon V, this can legit be used turn 1. We've not seen turn 1 V-Star powers, because they're on Pokemon V-Star that take a turn to evolve up. Not this. And this is going to make Mew great again. We've seen a resurgence of Mew over in Japan since this set came out. It is largely due to Forest Seal Stone. One of the biggest problems Mew has is either bricking, or your opponent plays a Path to the Peak, and you have to try and navigate around it. Fun fact, even though this is an ability that can be used by a Pokemon V, it's not turned off by Path to the Peak, because it's an ability they can use, not an ability they have. So it gives Mew extra firepower in the early game and a guaranteed way to get around something like a Path to the Peak. Yeah, this makes Mew kind of ridiculous. But I don't think it deserves to be in the top 2. I do think the top 2 are pretty gosh darn clear. You can mix them around if you want, but I feel really confident that the top 2 here are the top 2. In at number 2, we've got Serena. It's the best supporter in the set. It's the best supporter we've seen for a while. Because it gives you 2 options. You get to do one of 2 things. Now, one of them is gusting. Switch one of your opponent's bench Pokemon V with their active. And sure, you're only gusting Pokemon V, not regular Pokemon, which is a bit of a pain. But it's also got a second half, which lets you discard up to 3 cards from your hand, and then draw until you have 5 cards in your hand. And one of the biggest problems with cards like Boss's Orders is, if you draw them in the early game, they're dead cards in your hand, and they are hurting you, they're holding you back. But now, this isn't a dead card in your hand. If you draw it too early, use it for draw. Love this, ladies and gentlemen. Absolutely love this. You are going to see a lot of this card moving forward. But in at number 1, it's Lugia V-Star. And if you want to decide whether Lugia or Serena should be number 1, the question essentially comes down to, what do you rate more? A card which is going to just pop up in a lot of decks, or a card which is going to make a deck that rules the format? Because right now, over in Japan, that's what Lugia is. And there's no counter-argument. I've seen the data. Lugia is the best deck in Japan right now, and it is the best deck by a mile. And it ain't even close. And that, for me, puts it in at number 1. The attack does 220. The attack is fine. It does discard a stadium, which is quite good because this can be countered by stadiums. But also, it's got a V-Star power that lets you play 2 Pokemon, colourless Pokemon, that don't have a rule box from your discard pile. Like Archeops. That's what you're generally using here. And Archeops lets you search your deck for up to 2 special energy and attach them to one of your Pokemon. So use Lugia to get 2 Archeops, and then those 2 Archeops will get you 4 special energy every turn. And yeah, then that opens up so many options. Right now, Lugia is number 1 in terms of best decks in the format, and there is no argument. In this list, I'm putting in a number 1, and there is an argument. There's a pretty good argument. The argument is, well, hang on a second. What about Serena? That's going to be played in a whole bunch of decks. And yeah, I'm not really going to argue if you want to go along those lines. I don't personally, but I won't be mad if you do. But for now, ladies and gentlemen, I want to know what you think. I want to know how excited you are by these cards. I want to know which ones you think look good. And if you really want, what would be amazing if you gave me a full top 10, top 20 list in the comment section. So go nuts! Be nice. And then make sure you like this video, subscribe to this channel, follow me on Twitter at TheWasi. That's where we talk Pokemon and card games and Pokemon card games, all kinds of fun things. And please do consider checking out patreon.com/PTCGradio, where you can support the channel, get some bonus podcasts where I answer all of your questions, join a Discord where we chat Pokemon and basically anything else you want to talk about, and you can get shoutouts on the channel like the lovely UberMX, who has been a supporter of ours for a very long time now. Thank you very much to UberMX for being a very lovely person and for the continued support for a very long time. But by far the most important thing as always, look after yourselves till next time, would ya? Thank you very much for watching. My name's Ross and you've been watching PTCG Radio.